I'm James Ernest, and today we're playing The Harvest. The Harvest is a really tight little card game. It's 36 cards. Each one of them is unique and interesting and different, and they all have special abilities. This is what the game looks like in progress. There is a street in the middle. These are sort of shared cards. They're sort of characters that aren't allied with either of us and sort of work for both of us. That's the street. And then you have a hand and I have a hand, and there is a discard pile and a deck. And all of this is face up just like you see it. There's no secret information in this. And hardly any random information except the order that the cards come off the deck. So the object of the game is to run your opponent out of money. We each start with $21. I've got chips today, but the deck that we sell at DriveThru actually has enough paper money for 2 players. That's because their smallest tuck box is 54 cards, and this deck is only 36. So we had room to put some play money in there. The game is basically for 2 players, but the cards are worded for multiplayers, and there is a section of multiplayer rules. You will need more than just the money that comes with it if you want to play with 3 or more players. So the setup is basically a quick little draft, and I'll explain some of the rules as I do the draft. First, I'll ask you if you want to choose odd or even to go first. That's just a randomizer. The 36 cards in the deck all have the numbers 1 through 6 on the front and 1 through 6 on the back, and every variety of that makes 36 cards. So you might look at the top card and see that it's even and then just call odd, so let's do that. And now I'm going to deal 3 cards into the street, and the 4th card, the one that goes into the discard pile, that'll be the one that you called. So you called odd, let's do it. Here's the 3 cards in the street, all even. And then because this flips, it's an even number as well. So I'm going to draft first. The street has 3 cards to begin with. That actually has a maximum of 3 cards. The discard pile, every card in the discard pile has to be flipped face down. And if the discard pile is ever empty, another card from the deck jumps in. So the discard pile is hungry with a minimum of 1. And the street is maxed out at 3. So all I'm going to do is draft one of these cards. And let's talk about what they do and how I activate them. There's basically 4 actions you can take on your turn. There's a couple you're going to do most of the time and a couple you're going to do rarely. The most of the time actions are, first, I can attack you. Every card has a number in the corner, and that's its current attack. The little number under that number is just reminding you what number is on the other side of the card. So the butcher starts as a 2, but if he flips over, he turns into a 5. That's a bigger attack on his reverse side. All these cards are 2s. And how I attack and how you defend is going to be explained in a bit, but that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to activate a card or do the thing that it says, and doing that action flips it over. I actually can activate cards in my hand or cards in the street. These unaligned characters sort of work for both of us, so that wherever I do it will flip the card over. Some of the things that are less common, I can buy the top card of the deck. I spend the face value of the top card. And in the same way that the discard pile is always face down, the deck is always face up. If something were to wind up back there, it just gets flipped face up. I would have to pay $4 for this fisherman, and you know that I can only do that so many times with $21, so that's a rare thing. And the other sort of rare thing you can do is reset a card that is face down in your hand. And so every card has a reset cost on the back. The butcher resets for 0, the maker resets for 1, and so on. So once in a while I could spend health, spend money to reset a character that's under my control. Those are the 4 things. We're going to start the draft. I did win the flip, and so I'm going to pick one of these. What I have in the middle is a butcher that says pay 2 points to hit another player for 4 points. That's not too bad. The driver says deal a new street, so replace the one that's out there and put out a new one. And the scoundrel says flip a card of value 3 or less. That's relatively useful to like reset a card without having to pay its reset cost. I'll take the scoundrel. Let's see how that goes. The fisherman is going to jump in the street, and now you can pick from among these. The fisherman says draw a card from the discard pile. That seems pretty useful, so you're going to take that. The next is the director. It says flip every card on the street. She doesn't have a very useful ability, but she is a 5/5, so she's always really strong. I'll take the director. The governess is next. She says hit another player for the number of cards in their hand. Sometimes you'll have a lot more than 3 cards in your hand. Sometimes you'll be down to 0. In fact, being down to 0 cards doesn't knock you out, but it does reduce your options. It's being knocked down to 0 money that knocks you out of the game. You like the governess. You're going to take governess. The chief comes into play, and he says draw a card from the street. And you'll see that's a really super powerful ability, but it reduces him from a value of 6 to a value of 1. So if I use the chief, I also spend all of its attack points. I'll do that anyway. I'll take the chief. The next card is the greaser. He says swap a card in your hand with a card on the deck. And that's a way that like a face down card in your hand might wind up going back to the deck and getting face up again. You're going to take the greaser. And the gambler is the last card to enter the street. We also have the reporter on top of the deck. So the gambler says shuffle the deck and then follow the instructions on the top card. He's fun. And the reporter says swap a card in your hand for a card in the discard pile and turn it face up. So that's better than just drawing a card from the discard pile, because when they come out of the discard pile, they're always face down. All right, we're going to determine now who goes first in the actual game. We randomly sort of figured out who went first in the draft, but the draft determined who goes first in the game because it's going to be the hand with the fewest points. Your points, the greaser and the governess and the fisherman, are 1 and 4 and 4, so you have a starting value of 9 points. Mine's higher with 6 and 5 and 2. I start with 13. So you, with the lowest point hand, are going to go first. Let's go over your options again. You can attack me. You just throw a card at me and hit me for its rank, its value. I can block that, though, using cards from the street, so there's good and bad times to do that. You can use an ability on one of your cards, and if it's a hit like the governess, that's similar to an attack. I can still block that from the street. You can reset a card in your hand. Of course, you don't want to do that because you don't have any face-down cards. And you can buy the top card of the deck. So if you really wanted to buy the reporter, you could buy her right now for 4. So at the beginning of the game, you sort of need to read every card and figure out what the implications are of those cards. They're all blank on the back. They don't have abilities on both sides. The only thing on the back of a card is a different attack value and a reset value. I think you took the greaser because you plan to use him. So let's say you do that. You had a low number to go first, but now you're going to use the greaser. Swap a card in your hand with the top card of the deck. You're going to do that. That flips the greaser face down. You can swap a card in your hand with the top card of the deck, and since the greaser is in your hand, you're going to just do that, and he's going to wind up on top of the deck. You got the reporter instead, and now it's my turn. I could draw a card from the street. The chief lets me do that. The thing is, if I want access to the abilities in the street, I already have that. I can activate the cards in front of me or the cards in the street. So if I wanted to do something crazy like the gambler, shuffle the deck and just do whatever the top card says, I can do that. The result is I'm going to flip the gambler from a 4 to a 5. I'm going to flip him down. And I'm going to shuffle this deck and cut with my eyes closed, because these are double-sided cards. I can see everything that's going on here. Shuffle the deck, give it a good cut, and then follow the instructions on the top card. There it is. I got the imposter, which says follow the instructions on another card in your hand. If she was in my hand, that another would make sense, but I need to follow the instructions on a card in my hand. All right, well, I can do that. I guess I'll use the chief to draw a card from the street. And because she says follow the instructions, I didn't activate the chief. I still have the chief. The chief is still here saying draw a card from a street, but the imposter let me do him without flipping him over. So you're going to activate one of the cards in the street, and we're going to learn a little bit about attacking, even though this is not an attack, because we're going to learn how the defense works. So the butcher says pay 2 points, and then hit another player for 4 points. Paying 2 points just means exactly that. Your money, your points, get gone away. Something about your points, we sort of keep our discarded points separate because they sort of always belong to us. You can never heal above your starting value of 21, and so I couldn't steal your points out of the pot or anything like that. Just set them aside, and these are your discarded points. So you paid 2 and you hit me for 4, but you're hitting me for 4 in the same way that an attack with a card would hit me, and so I can block it in the same way. So let's talk about blocking. If you hit me for 4 points, I can either take that damage, thus, or I can block it using cards from the street that add up to equal or less than the incoming damage. So if there was a 5 in here, it would be too big to block that 4. But as we have a couple of 2s, I now have a choice. I could send you both of these cards. I give them into your hand from the street and block all of that damage. Of course, I gave you a bunch more cards, but I could just send up one and take the other. Now, the butcher is going to be face down after this blocking happens, but we do the blocking calculation beforehand. So I don't really want to send you a 5. I'm going to give you the driver, which is 2, which blocks 2 of that 4 damage, and I'm going to take the other 2. So what you wound up doing is hitting yourself for 2, hitting me for 2, but you also got an extra card out of it, so that was a net gain for you. And finally, since you activated the butcher, that turns the butcher face down. Now the butcher is a 5. That actually changes what I'm going to do, because I would like to hit you for some unblockable damage. I can just throw the scoundrel at you, and here comes the scoundrel for 2 points of damage. You cannot block because the only cards you can use are in the street and equal to or lower than the scoundrel. The only thing out here is the butcher, so the scoundrel's attack right now is unblockable, and you take 2 more damage. Back over to your turn. You have several options here, but since the street only has a 2 and a 5 in it, you could hit me for 4, which I could only block 2 of. Or, and this is one of the weirdest corner cases in the game, if you hit me for 2, I cannot block it with the scoundrel because the scoundrel loses a tiebreaker that refers to the number on the other side of the card. So the driver is hitting me for 2. I could block him with a 2-size card only if the number on the other side of the card, and that's the little number below the 2, if that number were lower than the number coming in. The reason for that is just so the 2 cards don't wind up attacking and blocking each other again and again forever. This is the time arrow of the game, and it's as close as we could get it to 0 without actually being 0. So if you attack me with the driver, I cannot block with the scoundrel. So you pulled the driver out of the street and just threw him right back at me, and that's another 2 points that I have to take. What shall I do now? I would like to draw a card from the street, so I am going to flip the chief to activate it and draw that butcher out of the street. Now's a good time for you to use the governess. You've been waiting for my hand to get a little bigger. She says, hit another player for the number of cards in their hand. I'll tell you why this is a good time to do it, and then I'll show you why it's actually a bad time to do it as we look forward through the play of the game. Here's what's going to happen. First, you're going to flip the governess. She says, hit another player for the number of cards in their hand. You're going to hit me for 4. This is a blockable style hit. There's 4 points in the middle, so I can actually block all of that by sending these 2 cards back up to you. Here's why that was a bad idea. Because now there's not anything in the street to block whatever I want to throw at you. So I throw the butcher back into the center, and you take 5. Oh, that was a poorly considered move. I'm only showing it to you because we're learning the game. If you could have, well, if you had looked just 1 turn ahead, you would have realized it was a terrible time to empty the street. And that's kind of the basis of this game. The structure of this game is really around the change making in the street and how much damage you can throw at me at the right time. For example, you actually are in a pretty good position to throw 4 points of damage at me right now. You can attack me with the reporter, and since the only card on the street is a 5, I'm going to have to take 4. Let's talk about some of the less frequent options you might take. If I really, really like the imposter, and I do really like the imposter, she's good for things in my hand that are expensive to reset that I want to reset anyway, or that I don't want to have to reset. Like, for instance, the chief. But I can spend $3 and take the imposter into my hand, and that reveals the mayor. She says draw a face down card from the street, so she's pretty good too. But unlike the chief, she doesn't turn herself into a 1 when she does that. She stays a 6. Something else you can do with your money, and I don't think this is a great move, but you can always do it. You're going to spend $2 to reset the governess. The governess is face down. She's got a $2 reset cost, so 2 away and the governess resets. Gives you a chance to hit me with her again on the next turn. Well, I don't know if buying the imposter was really a great idea, but I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to reset one of my cards. I'm going to spend 2 to reset the chief so that I can use his ability again, or possibly just fire him off as a 6. This is a good time for you to hit me again unblockably. You can throw the scoundrel at me, and I can't block it because the things in the street are bigger, so I take 2 damage from that. On my turn, I am going to use that imposter that I just bought. I'm going to follow the instructions on another card in my hand, so she flips down. Notice she's got a reset cost of 0. The instructions I follow will be the chief, and I will draw from the street. What card helps me the most? I'm going to draw the butcher from the street. I drew him because he's a big fat 5, and I can attack you with him, and there's not a lot of things you can do about it. You certainly can't block all of it. So you're going to use the governess again. That's why you reset her. So you're going to flip the governess down, and she's going to hit me for the number of cards in my hand, which is 5. You hit me for 5. The most I can do is block it with the reporter, block it for 4. So I'll send this 4 back to you and take 1 point of damage. I'm down to 5 points now. I can throw the butcher at you. You can either take 5 points of damage, or you can block 2 of it and take 3. So you're going to give me the scoundrel. You're going to take 3, and you're down to 7 points. And I've left the board in a pretty bad state because you can throw 4 points at me. Here comes the reporter again, back into the middle, hitting me for 4. I'm down to 1 point. Gosh, if there was some way that I could recover points, there kind of isn't right now. There are a few cards that heal you, but they don't really heal you very much. This game does trend to a conclusion. I will throw the imposter at you with 2 unblockable points. It's unblockable now because the only cards in the middle are bigger than 2. So you cannot overblock. You can only block with a 2 or less. And so you're going to take 2 points of damage, but you can throw the driver at me, and the driver is 2 over 2, which means I cannot block her with the imposter. She's 2 over 3. That's 2 points of damage I can't block. And one more little rule, which I mentioned at the beginning, but if I weren't dead, the street has a maximum value of 3 cards. And so at the end of that round, if I had still any hit points left, we would look for the biggest card on the street, which is the butcher, and we'd throw it into the discard pile. That's one of the bigger ways that cards go to the discard pile. And we've seen a couple of abilities that dig them back out. So the final score of that game was you wound up with 5 points left after running me down to 0. And that was 1 round of the harvest. If I missed any rules, I'm sure you'll pick them up, but that's the basic format of the game. The game isn't very random. The setup is random, but you are drafting from sort of known quantities. What comes off the deck next is random, but not a lot of cards come off the deck. It's mostly a matter of looking at the cards you start with and finding that path that gets you to victory. I hope you'll give it a shot. You can print and play your own copy of The Harvest, or you can buy it from our friends at DriveThruCards. Like I said, this 36-card deck also comes with paper money, cards enough to score a 2-player game. And if you want to scale it up to more players, you just need to use coins instead of the cards that come with it. Thanks for watching. I'm Ernest from Crab Fragment Labs. I hope you'll enjoy The Harvest in all of our games, and I will see you at the table.